welcome to another jungle video, and in this one we are going to be breaking down some of the world's jungle pathing that has both amazed me and made me very happy to see, but also made me slightly worried that some of you might be committing some of these same mistakes that basically prevent you from being the best jungler you can be and putting yourself in negative situations where you can't carry, where you can't impact a map, where you are struggling to actually get out ahead. As such, I have a lot of different examples to show you and go over like chess scenarios to show you what could have and should have been done better and how you can apply this to your jungling as we head towards the end of the season to give you the best chance of raking in as many wins as you need. So as always, please do consider leaving a like and of course subscribing if you do enjoy the content and want more. And if you wish to have the best live companion looking over your shoulder on this journey towards the end of the season, Mobalytics is here to help. The live companion is designed to help you before, during, and after each game. Once you get into the loading screen, you get to see the fellow teammates that will ride with you on this portion of your journey, while also allow you to import runes and builds for the statistical edge. Don't waste your time in the loading screen, as the app will give you advice based on your team compositions to maximize your advantages, only to be followed up by receiving useful, and that's the keyword, insights while you're playing, including ultimate spikes, item completions, and more. You can also track the gold performance so that you know which enemy to completely destroy. And now it also has jungle timers for those of you who do not press tab like LS. Post-game shows you the MVP, useful stats, and summaries of what you have accomplished. So in order to directly support the channel as well as to have the most complete way to learn, improve, and climb, download the Mobalytics companion app with the link below. Right, the ultimate message that I need to get out here is that pathing versatility does exist. There are pros and cons to a full clear of 5 camp, there are pros and cons to a 3 camp, there are pros and cons to a 4 camp invade. But the point is we have a kind of diverse jungle meta. Yes, certain champions and archetypes are dominating for the moment, but overall in terms of experience, tempo, resetting our camps, sequencing, and so on, there are a lot more choices than you are probably actually using. The straight up easy example is, hey look, Klid decided to do a 3 camping gank on Trundle, First Blood. And while that's nothing really interesting, especially from the enemy jungler's perspective, the Canyon vs Inspired example really showed me where things are going a little bit wrong for our NA and EU teams. As some of you might remember from last year's video, it was the Canyon vs Inspired example as well that sort of hinged that entire video concept. This year, once more, it's exactly the same thing. Inspired locks and fiddlesticks. He obviously starts that control ward without a pot. If your future's market, you can full clear and go back and get yourself some soak boots ready to activate that predator for some insane gankings. The problem is, yes, while Dom 1 decided to do a level 1 invade, they get deep vision, there is no respect, there is no creativity, there's no thought process to what if the Talon decides to be aggressive, what if the enemy jungler decides to invade me. And the thing about fiddlesticks and the thing about all junglers that are susceptible to this and prefer to do those full clears, you have to think about this. And as I'm not really allowed to show a lot of the pro view, you can see here, and if you are playing the game like this, you have to think deeply about the fact that they warded your red level 1, they know where you started, fiddlesticks is predictable, that control placement will do next to nothing, and the big darkness and the abyss beyond would have me concerned. I would try and plan a clear that would help me avoid this. Now you can do reverse clears, you can simply do buff krugs, you can walk the long way around. There's a whole bunch of things you can do to make sure you secure your jungle before the enemy jungler actually decides to invade you. Fiddlesticks is a little weaker in this department, and the predetermined nature of his clear needs to be factored into your level 1. That control placement is huge. The wards from your team are huge. You need to see the Talon, you need to see the aggressive jungler long before he shows up at your above and outsmites you and steals it. Very close actually for the Fiddlesticks smite to come up, and Canyon was delayed on it, but nevertheless the fact that he did the Red Raptor's Grom clear is a really good strategy. I love it in solo queue as well because it lets you basically go out with full HP, full mana, you're not wasting your blue buff for any reason, you can get some activity going, and you can always fall back to your crabs and your blue side. That's where the pick here becomes a bit of an issue. That's where an Evelynn and a Karthus, while you also want a full sequence for clear, you can adapt a little bit better in these sorts of matchups. Now what Canyon does is to keep that sustained pressure up, use Talon's disgusting mobility, take the bottom crab after forcing a TP for the dive bot, which they didn't go for, to shoot around the map and hit that top crab as well. Basically, it's predictable that Canyon would obviously fall back to his blue and his wolves, but Canyon says, well, because it's predictable, I'm not gonna do it. I know I can suppress you and deny you by double crabbing you. Now here's where things get really messy as an extension all from this first clear. Inspired is forced to go to the blue side now and try and take the wolves and the blue. The thing is, when you do this and you cut the map like this, you know the enemy team that has drafted prior lanes to handle this and understands exactly what Fiddlesticks is going to do. Canyon is feeding his team information, listen, Fiddle's nowhere else to go but to steal my blue side. Showmaker will assist in this regard, but Canyon does the most important thing about maintaining this level of pressure and denial of the enemy jungler. taking the second spawn camps. You know that around 403, the first camp Fiddlesticks finishes with his buff will spawn, in this case the wolves. You know he did the grump right afterwards, so if you can deny and steal those camps away while Showmaker and your team can push off Fiddlesticks from the blue side, he will be completely experience destroyed. And the thing is, the level 1 did not account for this. It's why predictable 4 clears and 5 camp clears are really easy to punish, much like they do against HLE Willa. You saw earlier today as well, 3 camp into an invade, we're gonna steal your stuff and force you out. And that's why I made a whole video on pathing creativity. Please go watch that, I will link it below. It solves a lot of these issues by not only assessing what's the most efficient way for you to clear and accomplish your goals, but also a way of either suppressing the enemy jungler or preventing their suppression of you, depending on the matchup. And because of all of this, Canyon can now track the Fiddlesticks relentlessly for the rest of the early game. He decides out of base, instead of focusing on his own camps, because those will always be there, rush to the Krugs. We know what Fiddlesticks is going to be. Try and push him up, create pressure. Fall back, spend your gold, rotate to the second blue spawn, knowing that you can also take the third Grum spawn. It is supreme denial. And when you pick Fiddlesticks, you really should have more of a coordinated effort in trying to prevent this from happening. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is simply not going for a 5-6 camp clear without thinking. Bwipo and Fnatic tried the same kind of thing to apply pressure to the enemy jungler, deny them the ability to play the game so that lanes can be safe. Junglers can play around them and prevent the enemy jungler from ganking or basically having any sort of happiness in this life. You see the delayed red start, you see the fact that he's cutting Chad moves across in between towers just to deny the blue side. The difference here is though versus Canyon, is that the Lee Sin actually will end up getting the second spawn wolves and the second spawn Grum. The long-term effects of this denial are not as supreme. The lesson here is that high-risk aggressive jungling such as this can come undone very quickly. What happens is Bwipo decides to move towards Dragon's side, knowing Lee Sin will be on Krugs, that's pretty standard tracking, and instead of actually fully committing to the gank, Hylissang goes in, uses spells, Graves kinda shows up, they don't actually have the wave in a very good position, it gives Prior on the blue side bottom lane to move on up. And at the same time, Chovy has created a nice position for himself against Niski in the mid lane. There's no coordinated effort like with Damwon to really fully realize the vision of this particular style. What Bwipo should have done is recognize all of this should have been communication, and you simply go, well, that sucks, I leave. There's no point dying over this particular crab. I know Blaber disagrees, but honestly, with 2 and 7 performances from both EU and NA, can we really afford to have these events? And as such, you lose a lot of the pressure. So while the pathing is creative and it was unique and we basically shut down the Willa, the issue is it wasn't sustained and there wasn't coordinated team effort to realize the dreams of the dreamers. I mean, Canyon did the same thing to Blaber as well. I don't know why Blaber is dying level 1 here, this is just absolutely asinine. But because of it, Canyon does what I've been telling all of you to do for such a long time. In fact, I covered it last year already. When you get to do this little cheeky invade, you steal the red, you steal the raptors, maybe all of them, maybe you leave a bit behind to screw the counter jungling like Canyon does. Look at the pathing. He moves across the mid lane into his own raptor camp. He is not detected. He uses the mid Prior to create a fog of war issue where he can very quickly dart around the back into the raptor pit. And you know what, in solo queue you don't actually have to be that disciplined. It's better, but you don't actually have to be, because the issue here is that Kiana will take her blue side and then go and counter jungle your red side. That's just vertical jungling. This is 2021. We don't want that. So you can actually just cut across the mid lane even if you're in vision, secure those things, and then of course then protect your blue side. And this is what Canyon does so damn well. And he plays around the laners as they're doing things. So in solo queue or in your Flux 5s or your Clash games, you can either organize this as a unit or in solo queue play off of it. What do we have? What's the situation? What is the reality of the game state? And how can I abuse this to suppress the enemy jungler? And now it's the same thing, right? Canyon sets up good sequencing by taking Raptors and Krugs and then the red, because you don't need to double stack the red buff. He can move to the top side, control the top side crab, and then of course fall back to his blue side. And because he didn't fully take the Raptor camp, Blaber can get a crab, go back to base, do the Krugs, and then finish off the Raptor camp, but he will not be level 4. And that's a pretty big issue, so you can see just from these examples how easy it is to abuse a boring and bland first full clear. You can also see how easy it is to simply punish a bad level 1 or someone being mispositioned and cut them off from 3 quadrants of the map, or at the very least delay their experience slingshotting. But this isn't unique to NA and EU. T1 Oner had a very similar event to the Scuttle Crab Bwipo event by forcing a herald that he really should have known was a point of contention. They commit Faker's Twisted Fate all to try and collapse on JieJie on his Krugs, with the intention of falling back and actually doing the herald. Now he sees Leona clearing a control ward, but if you don't, if you see a ward in the back of the pit with a full timer, do some calculations. Where's Silas currently? There's no ways he could have placed that ward right then and there and got him back to lane. He didn't. Also, the Jarvan happens to have a scanner, so he didn't place it. And as you carry on scanning, you see there's another ward in the pixel bush, which is most likely the Silas's, and was. This means there's no reason to start the Herald. This means that once you clear the ward, you get the hell out. You do not stay around for a fight because you know that ward belongs to Leona. Scout was pressuring mid with Silas, Twisted Fate, Faker had to go back and deal with that wave, which means mid lane has prior to rotate. Also, Canna was still topside, so you're going to be outnumbered 3v2. The whole idea to start the Herald there, even if it was by accident, should have immediately said, okay, look, there's a ward in the back of the pit, it's placed by Leona, let's change our strategy. Junglers sometimes tunnel vision, vacuum vision, just sucking us into one decision. Bwipo's crab, Oner's bigger crab. We need to process this information very quickly and say, you know what, this is not a good situation, I do not enjoy, goodbye. Adapt and overcome, as they say. Finally, a few notes on Liquid Santorin versus LNG Tarzan. And this is something that Santorin did very well, and that's calling the bluff. Santorin does a 3-camp bottom side, into the blue, into the grump. Obviously, you can fall back down to your wolves. The idea here is to get a crab. Virkayu decides to do a blue side into a red buff on a potential invade. It's close, but no dice, and it shows that Santorin was adapting in case it might have been an invade. He can do his blue and his grump sooner, and then fall down to the wolves. Had he done wolves first, all of a sudden we're in a more interesting scenario. Now it's very obvious at this stage that Virkayu is going to get the top crab and Talon will not. There's no prior, there's no ability to rotate and force a fight, and there's no point blabbering it for a loss. So what does that mean for Talon? Well, it means you can fall back down to your wolves and do the bottom crab, doesn't it? But then look at the map. Red side has not only mid prior, but also bottom prior. So instead of doing your wolves and going to the bottom crab and tracking the CS by counting it and looking at the Virkayu and going, okay, he did a 4-camp, he did the crab. I know he didn't do raptors or krugs, he's most likely going to do his raptors and then 100% going to deny me that bottom crab. So I'm not even going to head over there. I'm going to simply steal his krugs. It was a great adaptation, recognizing exactly what Tarzan wanted to do to him and then how you could get something back by simply calling the bluff and saying, you know what, I'm actually not going to the bottom crab, joke's on you. And now as Tarzan would recognize, okay, Talon didn't show up on the bottom crab, he might actually want to think, well, wait a second, where did he go? Because he would have done wolves. Did he reset? Is he sitting in a bush somewhere? I think he knew he's kind of on the krugs, but you need to confirm, and if he's still there, you can collapse and kill him. In the meantime, Santorin makes it up by taking a camp that he lost in terms of the 2 crabs. He can maybe attempt a gank on the top lane, reset, and he will control all of his second spawn camps with ease and no denial. Good first clear thinking about these possibilities so that you can defend yourself and defend your camps, understand that you don't have prior, calling the bluff on Tarzan, and maintaining protection of his own jungle while sneaking a little something back. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, a bunch of scenarios from the world's jungle stage, the pros and cons of certain decisions. Maybe you can learn from some of the oppression of the canyons of the world and the dynamic pathing that not only keeps you safe and secure, but also thriving. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. Please do leave a like, share, and comment if you did. Head to Patreon for your tier list, infographics, your coaching VODs, and your coaching signups. Keep those beards really nice and combed, and as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.